All right, joining me now, just two guys from Jersey, so that makes three from Jersey. The number one broadcast team for Fox, Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olsen, my guys. Fellas, thanks for joining me on All In.
Great to see you, Artie.
Appreciate you, buddy. It's good to see you.
It's been some journey for the three of us together. Greg, I go back, you were seventh grader, stomping the sidelines at Wayne Hills with your ball bag and your candy bars stuck in that vest. And Kevin and I both covering the games. And now we get to be back together on MetLife Stadium on Sunday. You guys are doing the Giants and Lions. This pairing for you guys together, I know it was fun. You were together early in the season talking about Super Bowl and everything else. You're 10 weeks in now. Is this just kind of like old hat for you guys?
I don't know. I don't know old hat. I'm still kind of relatively new at this. KB's got a lot more experience doing it than I do, but I'll tell you what, we've had a blast. I think we had a ton of fun last year. We had a great crew. Everybody we worked with, especially for me, just speaking for myself, just the first time ever doing it, to be paired up with Kevin and then, our producer and director, Pete and Artie and Pam, just the group that I got to really learn the ropes from week in and week out was just an unbelievable opportunity. I was very lucky to be put into that seat. And now this year to elevate up one more level and still remain with Kevin, right? At the end of the day, like our chemistry in the booth and him just having such a selfless approach to making sure that he covers up for the things that I'm still messing up and some of the things that I still aren't quite sure of the background, but he lets me just talk ball. He lets me just be crazy and talk football and draw on the screen. And then he handles everything else. And it's a really fortunate position for me to be in and be able to stand next to Kevin and just know that no matter what, he's going to handle it and he's going to make us look good. And, as long as I don't screw up that bad. So it's a very fortunate position that I'm in, and it's not one that I, take lightly.
The thing is, I feel like it's, first of all, Greg's humble because he's so good at what he does. But I think the most important thing is, I think people forget he's only been doing this for a year and a half, and I know he, had experience in kind of practicing to try and do this while he was playing. But it's a little different than when you're full bore going and doing this. And it's I think the biggest thing is I don't ever think we're not having fun and just, really just horsing around from the time that we get to the city to the time we're on the air. It just happened that, people are watching the portion that we're messing around. And, it's just fun. We laugh a lot. We bust chops. Obviously, we're from Jersey. All we do is bust each other's chops. So I just think it's been fun. It's the most important thing to me. It's been a blast. I've had a great time doing it with Greg.
It's funny. The three of us, obviously, we go back a long ways. I mean, at this point, it feels like, 100 years. But you go all the way back. Kevin, you and I know. I mean, everyone knows Greg as the NFL player, 14 years, essentially building a Hall of Fame resume, all-time Carolina Panther, first-round draft pick. But you and I remember him when, he was the best basketball player on the Wayne Hills team and, an all-county track star. And regardless of what he did on the football field, for you to not only be with Greg when he was becoming a broadcaster, even before he became a broadcaster, do you ever think back still to those days and kind of pinch yourself a little bit in terms of who your partner is right now and how you guys, your paths kind of got to the point where this season now has happened, where you're the top team and calling the top games on Fox?
Well, I do. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a cool story and it's a cool bond. It's, to get to do games with one of your good buddies. And, truth be told, I feel he's my guy, I've known him for a long time and I've known him, longer than a lot of other people have, and seeing him as roots and knowing his family a little bit and having that experience. So like I feel like there's a bond there. So yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. Just like you are, like we're doing talk shows on WGHT. I asked you to come do a talk show, and now you're hosting podcasts and you're in broadcasting. So like you never know where stuff's gonna go, brother.
Well, that was, there was a time in time and place where I was referred to as the fourth Olsen brother. I don't know if Greg remembers that, but I covered the Olsens so much, and Greg and Christian, and then Kevin, tail end of Kevin. Kevin, now obviously we get to see him in the background of your Instagram posts on the weekends, which is great, in your booth with you guys. Let's talk football a little bit, because that's what we do. Last night, Monday Night Football, Washington beats the Eagles, and all of a sudden, the NFC looks like a wide open scenario. You guys have the Giants this week. Let's talk NFC East first. Before last night, I thought it was the Eagles, the Cowboys, and then really everybody else. Where do you guys see it? How surprised were you at last night's result, and how does that kind of frame, going forward now, the next couple of weeks, when you're going to see these NFC East teams?
Yeah, we're excited. We've only had we've obviously seen Dallas a few times. We saw one time when they played Washington, but we haven't called a Giants game. We haven't called an Eagles game. So I know Kevin and I were actually talking about it in Green Bay last weekend, that we're excited now to see the other half of that division. We're excited to see New York live and in person. I love Dable. I think he's awesome. I've gotten to know Daniel Jones well. We trained together that 2020 year during COVID. He's from Charlotte, so we trained together every single day during the COVID kind of break from off-season workouts. So I've gotten to know him. So I've always kind of cheered for him from afar. I love Dable. I think he's a stud. I've gotten to know him personally, even though I never played for him. He's a guy I really like, and was excited that he got this opportunity. So I'm excited to see the Giants up close and personal. Obviously, in a couple weeks, we're hoping that we get a Philadelphia game. We haven't had a chance to see them yet, but kind of same story. Kevin and I had them a lot last year as they were kind of the rebuilding. Nick Sirianni takes over. Young Jalen Hurts, is he the quarterback? That was the storyline. So now to see them, start out the season as hot as they did, I know it's a team that we're looking forward to watching. I'm always cheering for Ron, just as a person. I just love Ron, and obviously what he meant to my career. So to see them play so well last night on Monday night was not a surprise. Ron gets his teams ready. They're getting better each and every week. So it's a fun division. It's a division that we're excited to hopefully call more games within. And obviously that starts this weekend, because we get to come up to New York and see the Giants for the first time.
Yeah, listen, I think the NFC East is really good. I still think that the Eagles are the best team in the conference right now. They laid an egg last night. Washington played really, really well, and they turned it over 3 times. So they turned it over 3 times the entire year. So I think the biggest thing for them is Jalen Hurts is a different guy. He's really good. He's really worked on his craft, and he's taken that next leap to be a really good player. So I think that's the biggest thing for them. Obviously, the Vikings have one loss. They just beat a Bills team. I think Dallas is very, very good. I'm the same. I'm looking forward to diving into the Giants a little bit. I saw the Giants a little. I saw them in London. I've seen them bits and pieces here, and obviously kept up on them. But I can't wait to see them play. I mean, Art, as you know, obviously my whole family's in Jersey. I talk to them all the time. They're all Giants fans. So I get the feedback from them. But I'm excited to see that. I think it's been so good, and I know what Greg thinks of Daboll, but I think that. I think the Wink hire was so good too, just in terms of attitude. Like the way he plays defense, to bring that attitude to a team that's trying to kind of get over the hump and win for the first time in a lot of years. It's kind of like the F it, like we're going to rush everybody at the quarterback and just, good luck beating it. Like I think it's been good for them. So, and as far as Washington goes, look, the only thing I can say about them is, Greg could talk about them with his former coach, with Ron, but I don't understand why, and Greg, maybe you could speak to this, like go back a couple years ago, the wild card game when Taylor Heineke had to play because they had 7,000 injuries at quarterback. He was great, and he almost beat Tom Brady in that game. Every time we've done a Washington game and he's played, they've been in the game and had a chance to win the games. I don't know why they keep trying to replace him. To be honest, you watch him play, he gives them an energy. So I would keep him at the quarterback spot, and the way he's playing with them, they're tough.
This division is really, in terms of getting the focus and the national spotlight, it's been down the last couple of years. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Giants have been rebuilding, churning through coaches every 2 years. Washington, even though they've kind of been on the verge, obviously the 2020 year they win the division, but that certainly didn't seem like it counted. So you guys have kind of relocated. It's kind of like you, Kev. It's your new home turf on the West Coast. It's been all about the NFC West, and now it's kind of shifted a little bit. The NFC West, I mean, sure, you have Seattle and San Francisco, who I think will end up battling for the division, and I think San Fran will probably move ahead there, but it's kind of fun. It brings back that old school, and I wanted to get into it, you guys. I know it's not until next week, but you guys have the prime spot on Thanksgiving, and as much as there's all the talk about Fox will have the Super Bowl and you guys will be calling a Super Bowl, I got to imagine two guys who grew up in North Jersey know the meaning of the Summerall and Madden broadcast. And on Thanksgiving this year, it's Giants, Cowboys, and it's not Summerall and Madden, it's Burkhardt and Olsen. I know it's still a week away. You've got 2 games before you get there because you guys have the Chiefs this weekend too. Tell me a little bit about the nostalgia. What's that going to be like? We were joking that if we did this podcast later in the week, we'd try to get some turducken sent to your house and see both of you guys gnawing on it, old school. But, to be associated with that team, that Summerall Madden on Thanksgiving, what does that mean to you guys?
Yeah,
I mean, I remember. Go ahead, KB. Sorry.
No. I was going to say, growing up, that's, we were a big football house, watching house. We loved it. And that was Thanksgiving, going and throwing the football with my brother and my dad in the yard and watching football all day. And certainly John and Pat, with the turducken and who's going to get a chance to eat the turkey leg at the end of the game. I think that one's going to hit me. I mean, these games, you show up and they're all big, right? I mean, we're having monster numbers watching the games that we're doing, these games. But that one's like a big deal because I feel like you're really getting welcomed into people's homes. And for me, I idolize Summerall and idolize John. And our producer, Richie Zients, worked with John for years. And so there's so many connections there. I think that one's going to hit me. That one's going to be a real honor. And maybe people will be like, oh, wait a second. Those are the dudes that are doing the Fox game now, I mean, we've had big games, but I think that's a little bit different. Don't you, Greg?
Yeah, that's a game that when the schedule came out, knowing we were going to call that time slot, call Thanksgiving. Like Kevin said, when we were kids, Thanksgiving was football. Whether we were going to a high school game with my dad, scouting, or whether we were playing in our own game or just playing in the backyard, football and Thanksgiving kind of go hand in hand. So it was pretty, that was pretty cool, to find out. And then on top of that, of course, to go to Dallas and have the Giants coming to town, just a traditional matchup. Yeah. Little did we know the Giants were going to be so damn good going into the game, right? I think there were some questions we weren't sure. So everything has really lined up. Dallas is one of the best teams in the league. The Giants are probably the surprise sleeper team of the league with how well they're playing and their record. So, yeah, I think along the lines of what KB said, I think to really have that sink in, it's probably not going to happen until we're standing in that booth and that ball gets kicked off and we realize every single family around the country sat down, had Thanksgiving dinner, and then they all went and plopped their butts on the couch to watch us talk about football and watch the highlight of the year, which is probably the Thanksgiving slate of games. So it's a really unique opportunity. It's something I'm looking forward to. I just don't know. I think it'll really sink in and really you'll get the feeling of it once we kind of get in that stadium and get around that energy. But yeah, that's been a date that's been circled on the schedule since the summer.
Now, Kev, I've talked to you in the past in terms of, this was your journey. You were in broadcasting. You wanted to be a broadcaster. You wanted to call games. So there were guys you picked from, the Mets broadcasters, Bob Murphy, Gary Cohn, Pat Summerall was kind of the soundtrack of your youth in terms of following it, and hearing them was also the soundtrack of the NFL. I'm curious from Greg's perspective, as an analyst, there is no higher standard than what John Madden was. Now, obviously, you're not going to go out and try to be John Madden, but I'm curious from your perspective, has there ever been any time where you've gone back and watched some Madden film and and seen some videos and, the characterizations that he had on the field that might have more meaning when you guys step inside that booth on Thanksgiving?
Do Greg freeze?
Oh, I'm sorry. I lost you there. Or I'm sorry. Can you ask that again?
Yeah, of course. From your perspective, I know Kev's journey as a broadcaster, he took things from other broadcasters as they grew up. For you as an analyst, this wasn't something that you had always dreamed of. But since you've embraced that role, the idea of Madden in a booth, I mean, all Madden, the Madden games. Being the analyst, there are going to be different eyes on you as well on that day, because I'm sure Fox is going to be having, clips of Madden. Have you ever gotten the chance to be able to dive in on Madden, the broadcaster, to kind of add to your game?
Yeah, I struggle at all ever bringing up the name John Madden in my early time now as a broadcaster. I don't. That's not something I'm overly comfortable with comparing myself. He is by far the icon and the top of this whole genre. He pretty much like pioneered the idea that former football guys, whether a coach or a player, can get on TV and talk ball over a broadcast and have millions of people find it interesting, right? He was kind of at the forefront of that and brought that into my household as a kid. His voice narrated playing video games as a kid, narrated the biggest game of every week. I watched the game of football as a kid, and his voice was the voice that I remember, and you couldn't escape it, right? You heard it on, EA Sports. It's in the game, right? When you played Madden 93 and 94, those were iconic moments in my childhood. So that's not something I ever compare myself to. I think anyone who tries to replicate what Madden did is going to fall flat on their face. I think there's one John Madden. I think he was unique. He was funny. He was super intelligent and smart. He talked to millions of people around the world and made football fun. He made it relatable. If there's any little thing that we could all try to steal from John, I think it was that this is still, at the end of the day, we get an opportunity to talk about football. We get to talk and make it fun. We get to explain it to people, but we get to entertain. We get to have fun. We get to join people for a few hours every Sunday afternoon and all enjoy watching the game of football together. Whether we're all rooting for the same team or not, it's something that I truly enjoy doing. And John obviously is at the forefront of that. I remember him ripping those turduckens apart. I remember him giving it to the Emmitt Smith standing on the field after the game, chewing on a turkey leg. I mean, I remember in my family room all of those moments vividly as a kid. So now to fast forward 30 years and the fact that it's going to be Kevin and I's voice broadcasting the similar game, the same game, it's almost a little surreal. When you stop and really reflect on it.
You guys, obviously, let's get to this week's game a little bit. I know you still have your research to do to dive into the Giants and Lions, so I won't throw that on you to break the game down specifically. But you've seen the Lions enough. Let's go from that perspective a little bit. You saw probably their biggest win in years when they beat the Packers. When they're coming here, now that they won on the road, for the first time, I think they snapped a 14-game road losing streak. Coming into this game, what do you guys like about the Lions in terms of what they've done? I mean, I think there's only still 3 wins, but what kind of threat are they to the Giants, who at this point, you got a lot of Giants fans saying, okay, let's get to 8-2 and move on to Thanksgiving in Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, they're in every game. That's the thing, right? Like, when you watch them, they're in every game. Their biggest thing is they haven't closed, right? The Giants have won close games all year long. They know how to finish these games. That's what the Lions hadn't done until the last couple of weeks. I think the one thing that people don't realize about Detroit is, and they've been up and down a little bit since the first month of the year. But they have an offense that has explosive pieces on it, right? I mean, they have an offense. They can score 30 a game. They have that ability. Jared Goff, obviously the quarterback, he's been better at home than on the road. But I mean, they have this receiver that probably most of America doesn't know. Amon-Ra St. Brown, USC kid. He's a slot guy. He's not this guy that's going to burn you for 40 yards down the field, but he is open all the time. I mean, all the time. They've got DeAndre Swift. They've got Jamal Williams. They've got guys that can play on offense. They've got a good offensive line. Their bugaboo has been the D, and they're so young But, we saw, you said it, Greg, we did the game against Green Bay, and, I don't know, they're so inexperienced. You don't know how it's going to go game to game, but that was really an interesting game because so many of the rookies made plays in that game, So it'll be interesting to see if they could sustain that the rest of the year. Obviously, they had the same thing against Chicago, even though they got gashed by Fields a little bit. They made a couple huge plays in the end. They had a pick six by Okudah, and then they had a couple sacks to seal the game. So it's like they've got some young talent on that team.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off what Kevin said, to your point, I think if the Giants are looking at this saying, hey, one more game and we're going to get to Dallas and we're going to play on Thanksgiving and, this is just another win, I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, Kevin said it best. For the most part, maybe aside from a game here and there, every game the Lions have played has been a battle. The ones they've lost have come down right till the end, could have gone either way. So if I'm the Giants, I'm sitting there looking and saying, I actually see a very similar team in the sense of young players scrapping by. When we win, we kind of scrap by at the end. And both teams are kind of a couple games going the other direction and flipping records, right? And again, you don't apologize in the NFL for how you win. You get a win or a loss. It doesn't matter if you win by 1 or win by 30. So I know Daboll from being, just being around him, getting to know him. He's not going to let his guys look past this game, nor should they. When you have a season going like they do with New York, and you've kind of come out of nowhere and you've really surprised everybody, at least outside the building, you've got to realize just how precious that is. You cannot take any game for granted. You are not in that position right now to just say, hey, if we show up, we win. It doesn't matter if you're playing the Lions, the Texans, the Chiefs, whoever it is. They've got to come and they've got to play their best. And that's why I think this game is going to be so interesting. I think the records are irrelevant. The Lions record to me is not indicative of, like Kevin said, it's not indicative of the team and the players that they have, especially at the young level. So I'm excited for the game. The Lions are a lot of fun to watch. I'm excited to watch the Giants. They got a lot of fun young pieces that are exciting to watch. I love both coaches. I think Daboll and Dan Campbell are just great dudes who do it with a ton of energy. They kind of wear their emotions on their sleeve. I love that. So yeah, I'm really fired up for these guys, and I don't think anybody in New York should even be thinking about Thanksgiving because the Lions are a legitimate test.
Greg, you didn't do a game at MetLife last year when I was on baseball, did you? So is this your first game in Jersey?
This will be my first game in Jersey with you. So in 19,
oh right, you did the game with Kenny. That's right.
When I did the game with Kenny, it was the Giants game. Yep. So I've done one game at MetLife back in 2019. Yep.
Got it. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Greg, you mentioned, I know you and I had talked about your prior relationship to Daboll. If you could just share with the audience, how did you guys get so close? Where did you meet him for the first time? And how has that relationship developed in terms of, now where, you're all in on Daboll, and you've said that numerous times on and off the podcast.
Yeah, so I've never played with him. I never played for him. Just had a lot of mutual guys that he either coached that were in played. So I first met him. I was in Carolina. He had coached Derek Anderson, who was one of our quarterbacks, and DA would always talk about him and just loved him, and they got to know each other well over the years. Whether he coached him directly or not, I don't exactly remember, but I know they had a really good relationship. So before games, when he was in New England, and then of course when he was in Buffalo, we would spend time before the games just talking, and it feels like I'd seen him 1,000 times before games, and just developed a good rapport with him. Then after I got released in Carolina, he was the coordinator up in Buffalo. Buffalo was one of the teams that I really strongly considered going to that year. He was obviously the coordinator for McDermott, who I really know well here and from his time in Carolina. So we just developed a really good relationship, and we kept in touch and we text. And actually, we had a brief conversation. He kind of called me to feel me out when he was making it. I don't know if anybody have ever told this, so breaking news. We actually had a quick conversation this offseason about whether I would ever want to consider getting into coaching. We had a quick phone call or two and kind of feeling me out, and it just wasn't something I was interested in. We were still trying to figure out what was going to go on with Fox and all of this. So it never really came to anything, but he's a guy I just have a ton of respect for. He's just a guy that I think does it the right way. I don't want to sit here and say I knew he was going to jump out to a 8-1 or whatever record, or 8-2, whatever it is. But I knew he would do well. I didn't know if he would do well this fast, but I knew he would do well because he's going to do things the right way, and he's just a smart football guy who understands all the details. So I don't have any direct time with him, but I've just, through my dealings with him around the league, I've always just really enjoyed him.
Should I call you Coach Olsen on Sunday, or should I lay off that?
You're welcome. Now, hey, me and Jeff Saturday, you never know.
The only thing is, if I call you Coach Olsen, I feel like your dad's going to respond to me. Like, I feel like, you know what I mean? Have it covering your dad.
His voice, all of a sudden his voice is going to like come out of the speakers. No, I'll tell you, I'll make one thing very clear. As long as I'm sitting next to Burkhardt calling this game, there's zero chance in hell I would ever go into coaching. If they ever kicked me out of that seat, maybe it would be a possibility. I'll just be very clear with how that works. The gig I have right now is the best.
Boy, yeah, 2 Coach Olsens. I don't think New Jersey on Sunday would be able to handle 2 Coach Olsens.
No, they're not.
What a story!
It would burn down.
The last thing I wanted to mention to you guys before we wrap up, and I appreciate your time. Obviously, you guys are bouncing around, going crazy. Greg, you're trying to charge your car and get to another thing. I do want to mention all the great work that you did charity-wise yesterday all over your Instagram, so people should really go and check it out. It really means a lot. I know your community down there in Charlotte, but also your home community here in North Jersey, even though it hasn't technically been your home. They followed your story, known what you've done in Charlotte. Obviously, TJ and his time, rubbing elbows with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay a couple weeks ago. So it's all great, and I appreciate your time, UNKB. The last thing I wanted to ask you, the Odell Beckham Jr. question. Now, this affects broadcast, and I got to imagine between now and Sunday, it's going to come up on your broadcast. What has this taken on a life of its own now over the last couple weeks? And because he's the free agent that's out there, I mean, you're talking about a guy who tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it's really only 9 months removed. Can Odell be a factor in the playoffs this year from your guys' perspective? Are you paying attention to where he ends up? I mean, it'll come up on Thanksgiving as well, now that the Cowboys have essentially gone out there and recruited him harder than Notre Dame and Miami and Tennessee recruited you, Greg, back when you were in high school. So the Odell question, give me your thoughts on what's going on, and can he reunite with the Giants and be here and kind of have that, that renaissance that, maybe people wouldn't have thought when they traded him away?
I think from my perspective, I'd be curious what KB thinks. From my perspective, I think it really is as simple as where is he in the recovery process. I think the timeline suggests that he's right on the borderline, the border of how we've kind of seen guys come back from ACL tears in the past. It's funny, certain guys that have a little better genetic gene, a little better gene pool, guys like Odell Beckham tend to come back a little faster than maybe some of the rest of us. So I think he's got that going for him. But listen, the reality is he got hurt, 9 months ago. And for a guy that's going to play wide receiver and run and really rely on his athleticism and his change of direction and ability to elevate, if he's healthy, he can make a ton of teams better. I mean, there's probably 32 teams that he could improve by joining at this stage of the season, with the caveat being he's healthy and he can be at least 90% of the Odell that we've seen. I mean, we saw the impact he made last year on the Rams, joining them for the back half of the season, and made some of the biggest plays. It was unfortunate that he got hurt in the Super Bowl. He probably would have been the MVP on the pace that it was going. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, if you're one of these contenders and you can get a healthy Odell Beckham, an Odell Beckham who can really come in and maybe at least in the first couple weeks play 20, 25 snaps, play third down, play red zone, make critical plays. These teams do not need him to come in and catch 10 balls a game. They need him to make impactful plays. Go up and make contested catches in the end zone. Go up and convert critical third downs. Keep chains moving. Be another threat to maybe open somebody else up on the team. So if he can come in and even just do that, then yes, I think he makes whatever contender he joins that much more so. So it's all contingent on where he is. There's a big difference between being healthy enough to be cleared and healthy enough to go out and play playoff level football. So I hope the game's better when he's in it. I hope he's healthy. I hope he's in a position that he can come in and help a team, because I know from our perspective, if Odell's on one of these NFC playoff teams, Kevin and I will have no complaints.
I was gonna say, selfishly, I want him to be in the NFC, right, Greg? So we could see him,
no doubt.
More. Look, I don't think the Rams get to and win the Super Bowl without him last year, and it's exactly because of how Greg said it. Because they lost Robert Woods and they needed like that extra piece, and he wasn't relied on to be the guy. But boy, he made some big plays for them down the stretch in the playoffs. So I think if he's healthy enough to do that, it's a huge deal. I'll say this. Just thoughts right off the top of my head, Art. I think if he goes to the Cowboys, if he's healthy, if he goes to the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys are the best team in the NFC, because the one area that they glaringly lack is a second and maybe even like a 1A wide receiver to CeeDee Lamb. So that is, to me, a game changer if he's healthy, if he goes there. I think the best story, though, is if he goes to the Giants, because I think if the Giants get in the playoffs and they get him back, I mean, we all know they've relied so much on Saquon, who's been just ridiculous. It's great to see him back. But if they get him back, the fans' reaction to him and know how much he's loved already, in New York and that Giants fan base, and they get in the postseason and they add him to a wide receiving core, which is like, it's amazing. Like each week it's somebody different. Art, you see it.
Yeah.
That would be unbelievable in my view. Just from a grand storyline perspective, it would be incredible. So, we'll see what happens.
Like Greg said, the health is the big issue, and nobody really knows at this point, and it's a lot of stuff that's out there. But, look, the next week and a half, you've got your stage on Thanksgiving. If I know Odell, and I know Odell pretty well,
yep,
I would think that Odell will want to be somehow on that stage, even if he's just being talked about. Wouldn't be surprised. Couldn't you guys see walking into Jerry World on Thanksgiving and Odell is sitting in the front row in the end zone, kind of waiting for, someone to bring a contract over him to sign? I mean, it's reality football.
No doubt.
You know him well. You know him well. You cover him. I'm just like I could honestly see whoever wins that game getting him.
Yeah.
Really?
And I could see somebody putting it out there too, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that, well, we'll see who wins on Thanksgiving, and then that's where Odell will end up going, and that's
going to be like it's going to be like an episode of The Bachelor. Like whoever, he's going to walk out the tunnel after that game, and one of the winning team is going to give him the rose. It's going to be amazing.
The more I think about it, Art, that's like you're so he is 100% going to be at that game. If he doesn't sign with somebody by then, he is going to be at that game. I could see it. That's so perfect.
Well, the end of the second, midway through the second quarter, Greg and Kevin, we'd like to welcome in Odell Beckham Jr. to the booth.
That would be incredible television.
I'm all for it. If Odell, if you're watching, you want to come on, please. That would be amazing.
That would be must watch TV. That would be incredible. Hey, Art, can I say one more thing off topic? Can I just add one more piece to this? You brought up the Aaron Rodgers thing with TJ, and thank you for saying all those kind things. We're happy to do it. But that was just another example when everyone always, and I always say this, and bear with me, people are always like, why have you been able to, do this with Fox, and why do you get to call these games? And obviously we talk a lot about my relationship with Kevin, and that goes without being said. The fact that the last 2 years I've been able to be in that crew with that group that I mentioned, and now in this group now, for example, Aaron Andrews put that whole thing together for TJ and Aaron Rodgers. I had nothing to do with that. And behind the scenes, Russo and Z, our producer and director, they're coordinating cameras to make sure there's somebody there to capture it. The amount of energy this crew has put to make both Kevin and I feel like we've been with them. They've called Super Bowls. Tom Rinaldi, Aaron, Z, Russo. They've called countless Super Bowls. They've called some of the most iconic NFC playoff games. They've done it all. And for them to welcome a guy like me who's only done it for 1 year, and then of course me and Kevin together now as the new crew, to join them from the outside, so to speak, it just speaks volumes to how much they've welcomed us and how fortunate I feel, and I'm sure Kevin, not to speak for him, but I'm sure he feels the same way. To join a group that has been welcomed us with such open arms and has such a wealth of experience and knowledge producing these big games, I know for me, learning the ropes still has been just. So you talk about right place, right time. for me to be young in this game and be surrounded by people that have done this at a high level, at the highest level for so many years, but are also just like good people, I just think is super important for, like, at least from my perspective, for them all to know, like, it's pretty rare, and you wonder why some guys are set up to fail and some guys are set up to succeed. Sometimes it's just a product of the people that you're put with.
That's pretty awesome. Well said. And obviously, I wanted to do this with the two of you guys every week. I think I'd text one of you or both of you and say, hey, how many more wins do the Giants have to get before we get the number one team to come slum in the stadium with guys like me in the press box covering this losing team? And obviously, it's going to be great to see you guys at MetLife on Sunday, but even more so on Thanksgiving. I know it's going to be a family affair. I'm sure both of you guys will bring your families out for Thanksgiving down to Dallas. Unfortunately, my family will be home. I wish they could come with me, but I certainly feel like you guys are family, and we've known each other for such a long time. Like I joked earlier, the fourth Olsen. I won't give up my title just yet, but listen, Kevin, Greg, I appreciate your time coming on here. And when the Giants roll to the Super Bowl, I expect to be able to go out with you guys in Arizona and, bring up some old times and have some fun and have some laughs. So, but thanks again for joining me this week. And I'll see you on Sunday in MetLife.
All right. You're the best.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
You're the best. See you guys.